I hear you now.
Okay, well, I wasn't talking. Like, that's the thing is, like, every time that I stop talking, you guys are like, John's not talking. And I'm like, I just stopped.
All right, hold on. Hey, what's up, John?
Hey, how you doing?
Okay, so it might just be a little more delayed than usual.
Weird.
Are you getting a little more delay than usual, Randall, from your perspective?
I think it just like lagged a little bit there, but it feels like it's okay now.
Yeah.
Randall, do a call and response with me.
Okay. Call.
Response. God, there was
That's not bad.
That feels pretty
There was, but
good
also
to me.
I didn't know what we were doing, so it's not an actual call and response. Okay.
Hey, everybody, welcome to Pursuing Pixels. My name's Kevin Portelli, and I'm here tonight with John Hines
Hey, folks.
and Randall Nollery.
Hey, folks.
Love it. Love it.
Getting off antagonistic from the start.
Take two.
It's a good intro.
But yeah, we got the trifecta back, and
right.
which is not guaranteed these days. So it's always good to have all three of us here, and back to talk some video games as always. And I guess I'll dig in right off the bat and talk about. I hadn't had a ton of time to play this until just getting home before recording tonight. I have been starting this pain management program recently, but I think as you know by now, I've been raving about the games from PUNKCAKE on the podcast a few times, at least their first two games, Anticrypt and Metavax. In the meantime, they've actually put out another game called The Ratch's Den, which was their third game, and it's kind of like a top-down. Like you play as the bad guys and you like kind of build out your base. It's like a turn-based. I'm not going to go too into it, but I've been kind of bouncing between that and Kingdom lately and kind of playing a little bit of that. But their fourth game just came out called Damocles Gaze, and it is a top-down 1-bit twin-stick shooter. And oh my God, this game is so much fun. And it's very heavily inspired by Nuclear Throne, like very clearly, like there's even like some references to it. And we've even had Remy.
Style though, if I can throw that in there, right? Like I prefer the style of this game compared to Nuclear Throne.
I definitely I will say there's like some small readability issues that don't really bother me, but there are definitely times where I'm just like, what the hell is going on? Because it is just straight up like black and white. There's a couple other palettes. There's like a softer gray palette, and then there's like a warmer kind of almost like Game Boy-esque. Not quite, but it's like a greenish, yellowish Game Boy kind of palette.
Right.
But you can swap between those, and then and I really like the black and white's just a little bit harsh, so it's nice to have those other couple of options.
Totally.
But essentially you play as like this head with a body, or a head with a body, an eyeball for a head with a body, and you just play and you run around and you pick up different weapons and guns. And the kind of catch to this game is that you can die, but there's no like game over. You actually play for 12 minutes. The runs are 12 minutes automatic, and that's just what you start as, and you get as far as you can. And it is a roguelike, in the sense that it's like procedurally generated and random weapons, random enemies. And then it even, we've had Remy on the podcast and interviewed them about some of their games when PUNKCAKE was just getting off the ground. And then to bring another interview into this, when we had Megan, our friend Megan Carnes, on the podcast, she was talking about tarot cards for her game. So this game here actually includes tarot cards as well, where those are what you're picking for your buffs. And then actually every buff that you pick is like you get your perk that goes along with that buff, but there's always a negative along with that buff as well, which actually is really similar to Fear of Gears, which is actually from Dev Dwarf, who we've also had on the podcast.
There you
go.
go.
Many links.
I know. I just had to weave it together. But no, it's really, really similar to Fear of Gears though. Like I was almost like, I wonder if Remy played this during the Ludum Dare game jam. Like I wonder if there was if it was in the back of their brain somewhere. But like it's the way it's balanced is so cool. Like where it's like, one of the buffs, for example, is like double your projectiles, but there's a 30% chance that when you kill an enemy, it'll actually split into two enemies.
Ooh.
So all your projectiles. So it's always, the buff is definitely always a little stronger. Like it'll be like plus 75% ammo, plus max 2 HP, but you lose like 90 seconds of the timer or something like that. And there's just like the timer's constantly ticking down. It does pause between when you get to pick power ups, so you're not like scrambling. Oh, I got to pick something quick. It does a really good job of managing your time in that way. And then when you get to the final 90 seconds, whatever world you're in, whatever zone you're in, the boss appears, just random, one of the random bosses, and they just plop down and they just start. And then the boss, you can't even kill the boss. The boss is just like a score multiplier that you just rail into. And the harder you rail into the boss, the higher your multiplier goes up.
Wow.
And I think that not only, I was just saying this in their Discord, just letting them know that like I'm sucked into yet another one of their games. And like, every element of their games is so impressive. And again, they brought in Pentadrangle from Cyber Shadow soundtrack fame and many other soundtracks. But like, again, just killed it on the soundtrack here. And they're actually making a soundtrack for Anticrypt to add into the game. They're going to update it eventually. Nice. I might have said that at some point on a different episode, but I'm really excited because that game was really cool and had like the old like super retro arcadey vibe where it was like all just sound effects kind of making like a musical soundscape almost. Nice. But I'm excited to see what they'll do with this soundtrack. But yeah, the game is just back to Damocles Gaze. It's just so stylish, like you said, Randall. Like it's so striking immediately, and you do have to kind of manage like your ammo at all times, and like you pick up different weapons. When you run out of ammo, when you shoot your next shot, you just whip the weapon kind of like as a melee, and then you just have your fists. And even that will be doubled. Like if you pick up that power up where your projectiles are doubled, you get kind of like a little arc, swing, and you get 2 of those that kind of pop out. And I don't know, it's just like, again, if PUNKCAKE, again, we've talked about it a few times on the podcast, but they're doing a game a month via Patreon, and you can buy them individually as well. But it's a $4 a month subscription for the low tier, at least, which is like a no brainer. I told them, I was like, this is the best $4 I spend every month.
How awesome is that?
And they're the most. Oh, I didn't even finish that thought I was saying, but their games are so replayable. Like for every other element that's so impressive, like the music is great, the graphics, the style, the gameplay, everything about it is awesome. But then they have this way of like, again, like you can't beat the game. Like you can't. Or there's like an endless version of the game if there's not, if you can beat the game, like in the Ratch's Den, they have like a kind of survival mode that just like lasts as long as you can. They just have they do such a great job of making these games like infinitely replayable if you like the mechanics essentially. And like, there's not like an incentive to not keep playing it. It's just kind of like, same thing with Metavax. It's like, you like Minesweeper and you like bullet hell shooters and you like kind of this cool like DNA construct, and like you're making like a vaccine, and you can make it like part of the gameplay is like making the vaccine for as cheap as possible. So like you can still kind of like with Damocles Gaze, back to that, like I can technically just keep doing better and better on the boss or getting further and further into the game and getting a higher score. And again, as long as you're somebody that's into that, but there's so much more to these games than just being a typical high score chaser. So that's really what I'm so impressed with what they've been doing on top of just cranking out a game every month.
That's unreal.
Which is unreal. This one got pushed back a little bit. Like it still came out in the proper month, but they kept like pushing it back. Like, we're going to do it this week. And they're like, we're working on it just a little more. And we're like, take your time. Yeah. Everyone in the Discord is like, we're just happy to play this whenever we can get our hands on it. So,
right.
They're looking to, there's already another game right around the corner at all times from them. So I just can't rave about their stuff enough. I'll definitely make sure to put links to not only this game, but just their Patreon and stuff in the episode description, because you guys got to check out these games. They're so good. And they even have other tiers to their Patreon where like if you're at a higher tier, you can actually like vote on which games they make next and like what ideas they kind of want to explore and whatnot. And the top tier, you actually even get a second version of the game that like, so Damocles Gaze has 3 extra tarot cards that aren't in the game if you buy, unless you're like the top Patreon. And they're all kind of like Remy even said like they kind of break the game a little bit. So that's why they're not in the real game, but like,
game
it's just
mode.
Cool. A little. Yeah, exactly. It's like a little reward though for like, oh, hey, thanks for supporting us at like double the, the going rate, if you will. But yeah, I just can't rave about their stuff enough. but I will stop for now because I've rambled on and lost my train of thought enough times there. So, John, why don't we move along to some of your tactics action that you've been getting into lately?
Yeah, and I've kept glancing down at my phone because I'm terrified that I'm going to forget the name of this, which is Mercenaries Blaze, Dawn of the Twin Dragons. And I've actually looked at this series multiple times. I checked on episode 60 was when I picked up, I think it was 60. When I picked up Fell Seal, Arbiter's Mark, another tactics game that I had to look up, and specifically because I couldn't remember the title of. Like,
that one's even more like random and arbitrary almost, I feel.
I know. And it's, even though like I had seen the Mercenaries Saga Chronicles on the eShop back when I was hungry for a new tactics game and was looking up literally any tactics game that was available on the Switch. And a year or however long ago when I picked up Arbiter's Mark. God damn it, what is it? Fell Seal, Arbiter's Mark. Yes.
That sounds right.
You got to just roll with it. You got to get the name wrong and roll with it.
And like, none of them were, getting rave reviews or were like saying it's like, oh yeah, this is the perfect like replacement for anyone who wants to play like a Tactics Ogre or a Final Fantasy Tactics. They're all like, yeah, it's pretty good. And that's kind of been my experience with them in the past. And like, I saw someone posted a screenshot of the like class tree in the newest Mercenaries game. And I was like, you know what? It's gotten to that time again where I want to play another one of these, like, regardless of like how great it is or how, like, maybe I'll just play it for a little bit and it was on sale as well. So that was enough of an excuse for me to jump in. But like, the reason why I went with the 5th game in the series as opposed to, because this is a mobile first, I think, series. So like all of these have been mobile games that have been ported then to PlayStation, Switch, everything else. And like the first one is a collection of the first 3 games, the Saga Chronicles. And then the second one looks exactly the same, and the fourth one, second or fourth, and this third or fifth one looks exactly the same. Like, I've been looking at screenshots and not being able to determine which one they are from only by like the character like portraits are you able to distinguish anything. And you know what? It's fine. Like, they're not reinventing the wheel, and like, the story is I would say, only part of the game that I would say isn't of like quality. The like actual mechanics of the game, I am having like fun with. It's very straightforward, very pared down compared to a Tactics Ogre or Final Fantasy Tactics. But that's what I want right now. I want something that I can really easily and just continuously play and have fun, and even have some difficulty with. Like, some of, like, if you don't grind like your characters overly, like, you can have some difficulty with the game, and I'm enjoying that. Like, I'm actually having a engaging tactics like game, even if the story is really not great. Like,
I feel like that's okay though. Like, I played the Shining Force games like for Game Gear that were on Sega CD, and that had practically no story, but I still loved it because it's a tactics game. Why not? Like, it doesn't need to have a huge story. I just like playing tactics games once in a while, and there really still aren't that many of them compared to other genres,
which I don't get. Like, I feel like we've like reached the horizon with Metroidvanias. Like, there is no shortage of that genre anymore. But like, seriously, I don't understand why there aren't more like job-based tactics games that like are like. So this one is fine. Like, this is a perfectly good way or use of my time and money, and I will continue to play it because I need to unlock every character and get every single skill unlocked for all of them. And already I was just like, well, I'm not really going to equip them with different weapons, but I'm like, I'll just buy one of anyway. Like, I've got enough money, I can buy one of every item. So it's a great low stakes time waster, and I'm glad that I didn't play 4 game versions of it before this one, because this one is perfectly adequate.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good marriage for Switch too, of course.
Yeah. Oh yeah, perfect handheld.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and I just real quick, I guess, while we're talking some tactics, and why don't I weave in one more reference to someone we had on the podcast recently? We had Matt Glanville recently on the podcast, and we talked a little bit about Dungeon Deathball, which is like a very arcadey tactics game. Like it has like some roguelike mechanics, and feels very, very inspired by Into the Breach in the sense that you get kind of that full like information. You kind of know every turn or every move that the enemies are going to make before you make your moves and whatnot. And at first glance, I said this before when we talked with Matt, but just to dig a little deeper into the mechanics, I'm not going to go too into it because we talked about it with him a little bit, but it's basically like at first I thought it was like a dodgeball game just based on that name. It's a tactics dodgeball game. That's what I thought. And it's like, it's a little more than that. There's actually elements of golf in the game. There's elements of football in the game. So you're actually not trying to like hit the enemies with the ball. You're actually trying to get a touchdown, get to like the end zone of each like zone. There's like 12 stages, and again, it has that procedural generation element, but it's a grid-based tactics game. And the thing that's interesting about it is it's one hit death for you. Like if you get hit by an enemy, you are dead, and you have 2 players. And you get like to upgrade them or buy like perks for them as the run goes along. And DJ, by the way, is like a master of this game. Somebody did overtake him on the leaderboard. He was number 1. But yeah, the game's like just came out of early access, or is just about to at the time that we're recording this. And DJ, I let him know today. I was like, somebody just topped it by a couple thousand. So he's like, hold my water.
Yep. He's going back.
Yeah. So that should suck him back in. And he got even more sucked into this game than I did. But I've really been loving it. They're just all different, just like Into the Breach. There's all different types of teams with different squads and different players that you can have. And again, if your player dies in the middle of a run, you do have 2 players on your team, so you can then rebuy somebody instead of buying perks. But obviously that's going to dip into your finances and really kind of affect the best score you can get. And the elements of golf that come into play are just like the number of turns, like getting a touchdown in a set number of turns. So there's like a par on each stage or each battle, I guess. But there's like different traps on the ground. So just like Into the Breach, you're going to be using like, okay, I can push this enemy. So you can still throw the ball and pass the ball back and forth and throw it into enemies. But the enemies, unlike you, take more than 1 hit usually. But if you push them into like a spike or something like that, or some of the like terrain type obstacles or whatever, you can kill them in 1 shot. But
are they
can
also
obviously
trying
do the same.
To score touchdowns?
They are not. They're just trying to kill you.
Okay.
It's almost like you're thrown into like a dungeon, like a there's so many like 80s movies that's like Mad Max style. Like, oh, here, just throw you in and now you got to fight your way out. Or it's like a gladiator kind of thing. Like if you can fight your way out, you can escape the dungeon
running
deathball. But
all that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. So but it's just really fun. It's got Matt Glanville's like just awesome chunky pixels, and it's got this really
the style
great.
In this one's amazing too.
Yeah, and it's got like kind of a pseudo 3D, like the way the camera pans and zooms and kind of snaps around. It's just got like the animations are really kind of minimal. Like you'll just see kind of like a 1 or 2 frames, but the way the camera kind of zips in and like it's got such a dynamic look to it. I really love, and Matt just does such a great job with selecting the tunes for the game too. Like it's really gets you kind of like pumping, and again, it's a kind of similar in a totally different way, but kind of a similar like kind of light tactics experience, like much easier than Into the Breach. Like for example, again, DJ is apparently the master of this game, but he beat it on his first try, and that doesn't seem to be in Matt's Discord as well. And it seems like a lot of people are having that experience if they're pretty well versed in tactics games. Like, oh, this is kind of easy, but it's kind of about like people are like, oh, I want to beat my score and try to get a S rank on each stage and stuff like that. So there are other layers, and on each stage you can pick like which ball you want to play as, which is like that's kind of your difficulty setting essentially, but it also is a score multiplier. It's really cool. It's got a ton of nice like interconnected systems.
Easy to
really
beat, hard to perfect is my sweet spot. Like that. Oh, that's what I want.
I totally agree. Well, speaking of a game that I don't think you can beat in any way or see all of ever, John's been playing some Genshin Impact.
Some is an understatement.
Why don't you get into that, John?
Yeah, I caved, and I once Genshin was announced on the Epic Store, that's when I finally bit the bullet and downloaded it and thought, you know what, I'm gonna try this free to play game that people have been playing for almost a year now. I think only a year. Was it in early access before that? Like, the reason why I'm throwing out the year is because it's the anniversary going on right now, which is
September 2020. That was the official release date.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's the 1 year anniversary, which seems wild based on how much content has been released for this game. That is unbelievable to me, honestly. And there's so many conversations that I've been wanting to have about this game because, and we've had a couple of them in the Discord about, a free-to-play game that is inherently predatory in the way that it has entire mechanics based around, this is a 14-hour, 6-day cooldown on this mechanic, but you can spend some real-life money and streamline that process. And that I am
just a couple of button presses, John.
Oh, very, very easy. It's so streamlined. So
especially
easy.
once you link that credit card, baby.
God. I have spent 2 months playing this game now, almost 2.5,
maybe even a little more. Yeah, I feel like it's been on the list of games that we might talk about for the last few sessions that we've had. So
yeah, but I have still spent $0 on this game.
Nice.
I've spent many hours playing this game. Is it or stubborn?
Whatever works.
But one of the reasons why I kind of wanted to bring it up now is because by the time this episode comes out, this will have been long since passed on the whatever controversy or whatever things the company does to overcome the controversy. But there was a extremely underwhelming for the player base anniversary event where they didn't give you very many free items or new content, and it was a slideshow. It was a very cute, it was paper cutout slideshow that just showed you game stats. It's here's how many slimes you defeated, here's how many times you've cooked, and this character is cooked most times out of that. And the player base was livid.
You're not getting any in-game items? It was just that?
They gave you some, but none of because there's in-game items oh good lord. So before the podcast started, I was going over some base mechanics, but I haven't even touched on this game is massive. This game is so involved, and there are so many mechanics. There's your characters that you level up. Your characters are, they each have their own weapon type, and they have their own element type, and their weapons have their own ascension tree and leveling up mechanics that you need items in order to spend, in order to craft, in order to make them, and then to have them.
This almost sounds like Xenoblade.
Yep.
There's so much more because the thing is everything about this game has to walk the finest line of being rewarding and frustrating, because it has to be rewarding enough to make you want to do it over and over again, and it has to be frustrating enough to make you want to spend money on it,
or at least consider it. Yep.
Yes. Yeah. And it can't be too far in either direction.
Yep.
And that is how this game has made $2 billion.
That's unbelievable.
By being so razor thin on that edge between frustrating and rewarding. And this anniversary was the dam breaking for a bunch of the massive, or at least a vocal portion of the player base. Maybe
out of curiosity, how did you feel? I
didn't give a shit.
Just indifferent, pretty much. Yeah, that's what I figured.
I didn't even know that people thought this was insufficient, because the only reason why I knew was because part of the anniversary was they gave you a link that you had to post, and I posted it because it took no effort, and I was like, fine, I'll make a Twitter post. You can click on this link, and then I'll get free stuff, and I'll look. And like, I went on, like, I searched the tag on like various social media just to try to find other people's links, being like, yeah, this is a hassle and like an extra step in order to get items, but I'll at least like click on a few and like give some people stuff, and hopefully they'll click on mine and I'll get some stuff. And all I found was just people losing their goddamn minds over this.
Wow.
And like, I'm guessing these are people who have spent money on this game and have seen this as like something that they want a reward for, and
or almost an investment in a way, you know?
Right. At least loyalty. Yeah.
And because of that, like, they had like immediately like they add, so you have to spend so you spend this one item in order to get, I actually have to look this up because it's going to drive me nuts if I don't have the exact item name, because there are two different types. There's a fate, you know what, I'm not, it's going to be too complicated. There's too many steps involved. But there's at least, you need to have 10 of one in-game currency, and you need to spend 160 of another in-game currency to get one of those 10. And they were like, God, we will eventually give you 10 free of that in order to wish, and every wish that you, if you use 10 wishes at once, you're guaranteed a 5-star item or a 5-star character. If you just do them individually, you're just rolling your chances. So you always make them in groups of 10. Right. Because you're guaranteed one instead of however many. But they like immediately after the backlash were like, here's 400 of the one that you need to buy. Jesus. That you used to buy the 10, not like, they didn't give you 400. That would have been, I mean, that would have been great. That would
break the economy.
But again, I'm like, they were so immediately in crisis mode that like, they're like still gauging the waters and being like, all right, is this going to appease you guys? Is this enough to move on? Like, but it's so like, I don't know. It stresses me out on some front because the way that this game makes money is by having an active and engaged player base. Yeah. It isn't like just, you buy this game once and it's fine. Like, in order for them to continue to make content and to continue to make money, they're at the mercy of the people who play the game all the time. And the people who play that game have maybe an outsized influence on, I don't know, like the developers, the PR. Like, it is really weird to see this relationship of like a predatory game and a somewhat abusive fan base, and then see, like, not really cheer for either side, and just be like, I don't know. This game makes me feel weird. This game makes me feel real weird. And
they have to be worrying too for like, I don't know if worrying, because all these games are still huge. But like with these free to play or like these, for like the battle royale games that were coming out, it did seem like it was just like one would kind of come out and replace the other one. It was like, everybody's playing, Battlegrounds or PUBG or whatever that game's called, and then all of a sudden it's like everyone's playing Fortnite. Nobody even talks about that game anymore. But I know people still play it and everything. But like, I wonder how much of it is them just being like, shit, what if somebody makes like a different version of this, and like we just lose our income at a drop, and it could happen, obviously.
And like, there's got to be another one in the wings, if not this genre, at least like there is someone looking at the success of Genshin Impact and saying, this is the model that we need to be making our games moving forward, and that scares the shit out of me. Like, I don't want that to be, because like, I don't want to play one game forever. And I don't want to have to play that game every day and not miss any content. And
especially
not miss
that.
Yes. It sucks. Like, yes. This game is incredible. Like, this game is really well made. and really fun to play, and it's designed to be really addictive and really fun and rewarding to play. But like, I don't want games to be this. I don't want this to be the future of games, and I don't want other main. I know they are. It has to be, because this is
you can feel it coming.
Massively successful.
This isn't going to go away.
Yeah,
it's not.
And I don't know. It makes me feel all sorts of ways for a game that I legitimately think is an incredible game and really fun to play.
Man, that's
like I can't recommend it to anyone. Like,
it's like it's like it is cool maybe to check it out as like a curiosity, and like, oh, it ends up, hey, I actually kind of like this, and like I like playing it and having fun. But like, if that was how games, like, oh, this is just how all the games I play are, it's not.
Yeah.
Nobody has the time for that, and
Yeah.
Let alone the predatory practices.
Yeah.
Geez,
not feeling great about that. But you know what I am feeling great about is whatever this next conversation we're having is. Randall, take it away.
We're on to some Randall action. We've been kind of cutting you out here, Randall. We've been saving your game for the end of the discussion. Here.
I've been throwing my words in there. And that's, I like to be at the end because I like to be a little bit more open-ended and conversational. So in that same theme, so last time I was on, I talked about beating Ori and the Blind Forest, kind of like going back to a game that I had dropped off in 2020 and beat. And I am still kind of on that kick. Another game that I had started playing around 2020, early 2020, and then dropped off, mid-pandemic. And this one explicitly dropped off because of the pandemic and all the sour feelings that 2020 caused. And that's The Last of Us Part 2. I've talked on the podcast before about this, episode 94, way back then in March, but... and I talked then, too, about how much I like the first Last of Us game. It's probably my favorite PlayStation 3 game. And I know Kevin and DJ are outspoken in their not so much love for The Last of Us. As compared to other Naughty Dog entries.
Yeah, it just kind of, and I feel like for me, that was kind of the turning point. Although, to be fair, I haven't played a ton of Uncharted 4 or any of Last of Us 2, but I kind of have fallen off. Like, I've lost the enjoyment that I had, and like Uncharted 2 and 3 are, I don't know if they would hold up that way, but at the time I would even say like, I think these might even be better than Mario games, man. Like I would say to DJ, these might be like my favorite games. Like I love them.
You would say that, Kevin?
At the time, yeah, that's true. One of the new things I'm trying to do, by the way, is instead of saying something is in my top 10, is it's in my top 10%. So
honestly, it's genius.
Yeah.
It is.
Because there's hundreds of things in my top 10%. But anyways.
Honestly, yeah, just by volume. And that adds on, the number of games possible.
Yeah, the more I play, the more I can love.
Right, exactly. So I was a big fan of The Last of Us. Bought the DLC, played through that too, which kind of got even more into like Ellie's story, because the first game primarily focused on the main character, Joel, Ellie being kind of more the sidekick character. But then Last of Us Part 2 comes out for PlayStation 4. It was a major reason why I ended up picking up a PlayStation 4 Pro, is because I'm like, okay, now it's time to get serious. Let's play this game.
Yeah.
But yeah, wow. It is it's pretty bleak, and a lot of the story elements that would kind of balance out the game in the first Last of Us, because obviously this is all still like ultimately a horror action type of, you can call it survival horror, but it's not really that. You're very empowered. You have tons of weaponry at your disposal. So it's not a traditional survival horror game in that way. I never felt like so weak that I couldn't just mow down most things when I wanted to. So more, horror action, I would say, for both of these games.
With some stealthy elements still? Like, do they still have that kind of feel like the first game did, or?
Yeah, definitely some stealthy, although I'm realizing that I'm just bad at stealth, I think. Because
same. Yes.
Yeah. Like in Hitman or in these games, like it would just fall apart so quickly. And then like, well, I guess I'm just going to clear out this whole encampment again. Just come to me, baby. So I'm going to murder all of you one by one. There's no survival happening here. It's just me. Every time. That's okay though.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the first game would have these like lighter moments and building up the characters and kind of the relationship between Joel and Ellie and a lot of other things and, you know, character development and things that would just kind of give you a break from like the dreariness, right? And part 2 definitely leans way harder into dreariness and bleakness, which, I guess I should expect that for what this game is, but even still, it was hard at the time to keep pushing through this game and not move on to playing Animal Crossing or whatever else, right? You know, it's so
did you
finally
play
got
palate
it back?
Cleanser games?
Yeah. I mean, I needed some at the time, and that still didn't even do enough. But this time, I didn't palate cleanse. I'm just like, let me push through this.
Oh.
Like, let me just be done with this game. Back last year, I said, oh, I'm about 8 hours in. I think I'm about halfway through. No. My playtime clocked in at about 40 hours.
Nice.
Yeesh.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And I feel like that. I'm finding myself saying this often these days, but I felt like that was a little long. I didn't need the game to be that long. And it's, you know, again, tough to complain about more game, but I give me a concise experience yet again. I'm trying to figure out, like, I'm kind of dancing around a lot of details because I don't want to get too spoilery. But there was a lot of meta controversy around this game when it came out. I guess what I'll say is there's like a big moment that folks considered spoilery that I managed to avoid, thankfully, when playing through. And it does happen relatively early on. But that it really upset other people that this moment happened in the game. And it never bothered me. I thought it made actually a lot of, narrative sense what happened when it happened. That's what I'll say to avoid spoilers.
Okay.
Okay.
And yeah, I guess the action's as well crafted as the first game and even improved in some places, but I don't know. It feels really familiar and it just generally doesn't feel as well-rounded of an experience as the first game did. Like I guess I'm glad that I played it, but I think it's just okay. I think it's fine, And I expected it to be great.
Did it feel like it needed to exist as far as like could they have left the story hanging where it was? Like, did they leave it on too much of a cliffhanger where they needed to kind of follow up the game, or?
And that also
the first one, that is,
to that point, did it need to be 40 hours?
No.
Could they have made a 10-hour game? Like,
10 might have been pushing it to be a little short. I think they could have made it 15, and I think that's about what I'd put into the first game. And, maybe 20 tops.
I almost wonder if you split the two games that they made into a trilogy, kind of like they did with because that was kind of my thing with the first 3 Uncharteds. They were all like 8 to 10 hours and just like boom, 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 action, like whatever you wanted out of those games, like, or I guess whatever it was doing it nonstop, full tilt for the whole game.
Yep.
And like The Last of Us was like, oh, it started getting a little sloggy, and then Uncharted 4 was starting to get that way too. It was like, I got to play the first level of Crash Bandicoot before I can even play Uncharted. Like, what the hell is this? Which is cool. I mean, it's like, it was cute,
but yeah, there's
it was
I have
cute,
big
but
issues with Uncharted 4. I'm not a fan of that game.
I didn't
much.
even like get into the game. Like, I got into the part where like I was talking to DJ. He's like, "How far did you get?" And I was like, "I got to the part where you're like sneaking into like the museum or something." He's like, "Dude, that's the beginning of the game." I was like, yeah, I know. I was bored.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I mean, Uncharted 4 looks pretty. All those games look pretty. I mean, I kind of had some problems with 3, let alone 4. But by the time 4 rolled around, I'm like, I'm very much done with this. I'm good. I didn't need this to exist.
But like, remember like the tutorial in Uncharted 1 and 2? Like, one of the two of those, it was just like you literally just start out on like a speedboat and you're just like gunning down people as they're like chasing you, and they jump on the boat and you're just beating their ass. It's it just shows like a button prompt, almost like it's a quick time event, and it's just like, oh, now you know how to punch. Okay, beat the shit out of these guys. It's just like, how did you go from that to like, oh, here's your brother, and here's your, here's 2 hours of story, and play some PlayStation 1 while you're at it.
See,
It's just crazy.
That's why.
So, I don't think I've actually mentioned it on the podcast yet, but like, Lauren and I watched all of Yakuza 0.
Definitely have not.
Just the cutscenes.
Yeah,
Because I had never bought any Yakuza games, but like we watched, like I was watching a Let's Play of Yakuza 0 and stopped because the cutscenes of that Let's Play were good enough that I'm like, Lauren would like this, and she did, and we loved it. It was 13 hours of cutscenes was in Yakuza 0.
That's like Kojima status.
Wow.
But like, it was like I don't think I've made this point yet on the podcast. It was embarrassing for other games because I'm like, every other game has attempted to tell a good story and they all suck in comparison to like this story. Like the story in Yakuza 0 is so good, and the story of every other narrative game I've ever played is so bad in comparison. Like,
I've heard those games are incredible, and they don't take themselves too seriously. I need to check those out. Like, they're better versions of Shenmue is what I've heard, basically.
Yes. They are.
Yeah. And they're all also on Game Pass, by the way.
Yeah.
They're also a million games in one. Like, the games like are so goofy, and like you do so many other mini games or like management sims within this games which is really funny in comparison to how like serious drama the story is. But at the same time,
that's what you need, though. That's what you need.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like you're saying with Last of Us. It's like you're playing game and then slog story and then slog game, slog. Like you don't have that draw to like, let's split up the pace a little bit.
And that's not like, how much of Last of Us cutscene. It's like well done cutscenes, but it's just like it's all the same. And like I can't really relate to the characters and their motivations because it's nothing but revenge, and like no introspection or anything else or like real character development is happening that much in this one.
Yeah.
But that's also the thing is like, it's hard. Like, it is difficult to make a story that can sustain itself over that long. Like, there's definitely stumbling blocks in Yakuza 0, and then there's gameplay in between that. Like, so you have to make like good quality gameplay that fits in between good quality story, and that story, both of those have to be long enough for whatever measurement of time you like have decided before the game. Like we also then watched Yakuza Kiwami 1, which is the remake of Yakuza 1, and that cutscene was 4 hours. Like, and that was a remake of the like cutscenes that were in the original Yakuza, and they padded that out and added additional stuff to make the story make more sense. And they still could only make that be 4 hours long. And you know what? It didn't need to be any longer.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's my speed.
Yeah,
it's a very difficult thing to make a cohesive like cinematic story and then also have that tied to gameplay. So like, do you think that Last of Us 2 would have been better if like they had just had less story, or like would they have been able to hit that as effectively? Because like, I'm assuming like the gameplay was still like made sense and like, you have to like do this level and have this go to this place or whatever.
And I should have really liked it because like it's the main backdrop of it is in Seattle with like actual Seattle landmarks and stuff, and like, there's another reason why I'd play it. And like, it is well made gameplay wise, and it's exactly the same gameplay loop that I liked of collecting supplies that you can craft into stuff, and secret rooms to get in with safes that you have to find the lock combination to in some other room. Like there's all that stuff just like there was in the first game, which was cool. And I'm also dancing around another like quasi spoiler, so sorry listeners, I guess, but there's actually 2 playable characters in this game, and that's another factor why it's so long. And I actually really like the other character better than the main proposed character that you're supposed to play with, to be honest. And it also it makes sense why they did what they did. The second half is better than the first half. I'll say that too. It makes sense why they did what they did to set up the end. It just was way too much to get to that point.
Like not worth the setup wasn't worth what's that saying? The juice wasn't worth the squeeze or something.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah. They gave me too much. Like some of that could have been a DLC, and I would not have blinked at that.
Yeah.
It's another
fill
game
in a
where
little
you can
bit
play.
of the story on the side, or something. Yeah.
It's another game that has 2 playable characters.
What's that?
Yakuza 0.
There you go. Boom.
I thought you were gonna say Genshin.
No, my God, Genshin
There's a few more, I think.
Yeah, I've got like 13 characters. Woof.
So a little too much game, a little too much visceral violence without much else to grab onto. But I completed it, and I guess I'm glad that I completed it. And I did actually. I sold my PlayStation 4 Pro after I beat this, because that was like the main game I wanted to play on this, and got a really good trade-in deal on it.
Hell
nice. My man's going full Xbox. I love it.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, well, and Switch and whatnot.
Switch.
But
I've gotten a little bit back into Switch. I'll say that.
Nice.
But yeah, it was just fine. It was fine. I guess if they made a part 3, I suppose I'd play it, but I wouldn't be like jonesing for it like I was when 2 came out in the same way.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's a little bit of a shame, but nice to know that they kind of like, at least from your perspective, like turned it around for the second half of the game.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, I didn't feel like the whole game ended on like a totally sour note, and
Yeah, I mean, it's still pretty bleak. Not completely negative as far as experience goes.
Yeah, nice. But I guess we've talked enough video games tonight, guys. If we're good to wrap it up there,
plenty of video games.
And and as always, you can find us on the internet at pursuingpixels.com. We're on Discord, we're on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, kinda, Twitch, kinda. I'm gonna try to start streaming a little more. We'll see. We're on the internet, guys.
We are on the
internet. But yeah, until next time, we will catch you next week, and take care.
Bye.
Bye.
1, 2, 3.
What? I don't know what we're doing
at the same time.
Oh no! Oh no! Oh no!
Okay, you guys go again. I don't know what I was. Why did I? Oh my God, guys, I'm going.
Well, hey, no, I think it was because Randall last time was like, "Hey, you got to introduce John first." So we got the cross wires, cross wires going on.
Crosswire.
Ooh, wait. Yeah. What are you singing there?
The Crossfire commercial.
I caught up in the crossfire.
Yeah,
I thought you said crossed wires.
I did,
and you said it in a very similar way to a Superchunk song that is called Crossed Wires. I was like, does Randall listen to Superchunk?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah,
you don't like Superchunk? Oh,
that's right, baby.
That is a statement.
You would like some of their stuff if you gave him a chance. If you gave him a chance,
let's fight.
Just give him a
John
chance,
Worster. He says he's the worster at drumming.